Help support AMTV by becoming a patron, an AMTV staff member, and following us over on Twitter. Hi there guys, it's Adam Martyn here, and today we're going to be talking about CBBC and CBEEBIES, the BBC's two children's channels that are going to be going under a bit of a renovation in the logo department, it seems, which I know is going to be a point of interest to a lot of you. So a bit of context, the BBC itself has obviously gone under a big rebrand recently. I think the new corporate logo was first announced in 2021. You know, a slight amendment to the blocks using the BBC's own wreath-style font named after the original Director General and such. And that started rolling in 2021. 2022 was the time when it really started kicking up, and which made sense. You know, that was the BBC's 100th anniversary, so you started seeing BBC One, BBC Two, you know, adopting the look and with some new idents as well. BBC Three came back to TV along with some new idents as well, and BBC Four itself adapted, as did the iPlayer, BBC News. A lot of the Beeb systems have undergone this change. But CBBC and CBEEBIES, at least up until now, have sort of stayed the course. You know, they haven't adapted their logos or their idents to match. They've kept what they've had. Now, CBBC has had this logo that you see here since I think it was around 2016, wasn't it? And I remember at the time when they announced this, there was a lot, and I mean a lot of negative press about this. A lot of people didn't like this. We had gotten used to maybe the bright, you know, green blocks that CBBC had been using for nearly a decade. That was certainly, like, the end of my time with CBBC was with that look. But the 2016 look, I think, over the last 7 years has grown on some people. I've had some people in comments of videos or some people comment in general saying that, hey, you know, we may not have liked this at first, but it's really grown on us. And I think, you know, that can never be a bad thing. We get used to things over time, don't we? So I'm glad that people have gotten used to this look. CBEEBIES, on the other hand, they've had their logo for even longer. In fact, they've had it since the channel's inception back in 2002, the sort of yellow blobs, you know, full of personality and stuff like that. And despite all the changes that have happened, not just to CBEEBIES, not just to CBBC, but the corporation as a whole, these little yellow blobs have mostly stayed the course. And I commend them for that, you know, keeping a brand consistent. I know they always introduce new idents, new sequences, but I think keeping it consistent always made more sense because, you know, for a preschool channel, I think having familiarity for kids with something like that is a really important thing. So it kind of made sense that they stayed the course on that. But, you know, these channels are facing big change. Like CBBC, for example, will eventually be going digital only. So you won't be able to consume it on traditional television anymore. It will move to a online format similar to like BBC iPlayer. BBC 4's going down that route, and I think that's happening well, as far as we know, like maybe around 2025. So we're still a few years even away from that. But recently it's been going around on the web, leaks if you like, some test sites that the BBC have been putting out with new logo designs, and here is what you see before you. So this is the CBBC site, and look at that top left, that is indeed a brand new logo, and it is there's a lot to say about it really, isn't there? So it is just the word CBBC emblazoned in purple. Now, you know, some of you, I'm sure, will be screaming about this, how this is like terrible, this is the worst thing in the world. So let's break it down. What do I think is the good parts about this? Well, I guess the main thing that is good about this new logo, this new design, is that you could argue it maintains a bit of brand consistency for the BBC as a whole. You know, they're using the wreath font, which was designed to be used, you know, solely for the BBC brand. And I haven't got a degree in like marketing or branding or anything like that, but I'd say it's fairly common knowledge that a lot of people would say having some degree of uniformity within your brand is helpful for whether that's recognition amongst your audience or promoting or for, you know, collaborations and stuff like that. So it makes sense, I think, that they've gone to the wreath font. I do like the purple. I've got to be honest, purple's one of my favorite colors, and I think, you know, if you're going to choose just one block color for a children's channel, purple is a pretty strong contender. There are others you can have as well, but it's not bad at all. Now, what about the negative sides? Well, for a children's channel, you know, if you've watched episodes of the ident review that I've done and all that sort of stuff, creativity in idents, I think, is so key to make them stand out, to make them memorable, all that sort of stuff, you know. And I think with children's channels, since you're trying to attract children, you know, you can be bright, colourful, all this, but it doesn't really have anything else. It is literally just the word CBBC emblazoned in purple. Like there's nothing more to it. Even the 2016 logo had a like unique design feature about it. Sure, not everyone enjoyed it, but at least it was different. It offered us something new. Whereas this is just, you know, this is going back to what it was in the late 90s, just incorporating that. But what I will say is this is just the logo. I think we need to wait and see what the idents are going to be like. Now, at the time I'm recording this, early March 2023, I don't believe CBBC has updated their idents yet, or their logo. As I said, these have been sort of leaked or found on a test website that the BBC's running, and it's been circulated around the internet as these things are. And, you know, if these things are indeed going to be incorporated into new idents, if the idents themselves are nice and creative and nice and interesting, then that will sort of alleviate the logo. But if you're just talking about the logo itself, is it the most inspired? Is it the most interesting? Well, no, debatably not. But the idents could really be the winner here. And again, I just want to draw your attention back to these. These were the idents used back in the late 90s for CBBC. And just look at the logo on its own. Just look at the logo at the bottom there. That is just the BBC logo with a letter C in front of it. And at that time, you know, 1 or 2 or whatever it was. You could argue back then the logo on its own wasn't anything that interesting, particularly compared to what they had during the 1990s, even back in the 80s, and then what they would have in the 2000s. I think you could point to this logo as being one of the most bland or whatever you want to call it, but the idents made it. Those yellow and black sequences, you know, again, really stand out, the two-tone color thing, lots of like comedic stuff, lots of simple stuff, lots of charming stuff. That's what saved it. So if the new idents for this CBBC logo can really make it work, then, you know, fingers crossed. But on the test website, at least compared to the original, so look, this is the test, look at the logo. Now, just flicking on over, this is the website as is. This is the, like, main one. So the only difference is the logo. The website layout is pretty much the same. I'd say the only difference, actually, is in the middle of the screen there. You can see that, look, on the test one, you've got shows like Blue Peter, The Next Step, Shaun the Sheep, all that sort of stuff. So there's minimal differences to the site, it seems. Let's just move on to CBeebies now. So clicking on over, here is the test site for their new logo, and there it is. That is a logo. So a few interesting things about this. They've obviously followed CBBC, going for, you know, we're just displaying the word. That is literally the word CBeebies, and there's nothing else there. What I do like is it's kept the yellow color that CBeebies has had for the past 20 years, you know, again, brand consistency, familiarity with young children, particularly preschool children. I think that makes a lot of sense. But the font itself is quite interesting. It looks Reithian, if you want to call it that, you know, this new BBC font, but it's more like bubbly, if you like. That's the only word I can describe it. This looks more bubbly than the new CBBC logo, and it looks more bubbly than, you know, the other logos on the BBC channels, the iPlayer, stuff like that. And again, I kind of like that touch. I kind of like the fact that, you know, we are aiming this at children, very, very young children. This could be their first experience of television, of programs and stuff like that. So why not create a logo that is relatively like soft, smooth around the edges, visually appealing, again keeping that bright yellow and stuff like that. So that's the good about it. Again, the negative just stems from what I said about the main CBBC logo, really. Beyond this, there's nothing much else going on. You know, it is just, again, a word. There's no interesting visual design. There's not different fonts for different letters, stuff like that. And there's no blobs adorning the logo. However, if you look at the test website, the CBBS blobs are still there, you know, at the top there where it says shows, games, etc. So I'd like to think the blobs are still going to be present, because that is CBBS iconography if you ever saw it, right? That is what you think of when you think of CBeebies in terms of like the logo and design and stuff like that. And again, I want to stress, like with CBBC, let's wait and see what the idents are like. You know, if they're not very good, not very inspired, not very appropriate's the wrong word, but if it's not very well themed to the channel, then, you know, you can decry this logo all you want. But I think if the idents match it, it can really salvage it. And again, similar to the CBBC website, this is the test one. Just look at the logo in the top left. This is how it is now. So a few differences, a few color palette differences there. This one's like got the games front and center there, but ultimately it's, you know, it's virtually the same, I'd say. And look at that old CBeebies logo. That has been there since 2002, man. That is brand strength if I ever saw it. 20 plus years with that same logo. But of course now we're going from this to this. And I know, again, it's going to upset a lot of people, especially those of you who grew up with CBeebies. I didn't necessarily. I think just as CBeebies came along, I was a bit too old. I was out of that demographic. But, you know, the importance of the channel still, I think, holds true. And the logo, you know, with both this and CBBC, do I like these? I think not like. I respect it. You know, it's the positives I mentioned, but it's going to take me some time, as it does with a lot of logos, to get used to this. So are these going to positively and negatively impact the channel? Who knows? Because some people would say, again, they're going for, you know, logos have been going more minimalist. I think a lot of a lot of reviews I've seen of the BBC's new corporate look as a whole is very minimalist, and there's nothing wrong with minimalism. You know, there's some beautiful minimalist logos that have stood the test of time for years, decades, centuries in some cases. I mean, look at Coca-Cola. But I think it's interesting to see it go more this way when children's TV, traditional children's TV, is arguably being less consumed. I'm not saying it's any less important, but I think in terms of consumption, it is a lot less. CBeebies not so much. I think I said this in a previous video, but with CBeebies being it's aimed at preschool kids, you know, parents know about it, it's reliable, you don't have to worry about like what kinds of content's going to be shown on there, like if you just instead put YouTube on or Netflix or any of those streaming sites, you know, you can reliably go to CBeebies, know what you're getting, and know that your kids are probably going to enjoy the content on there. I mean, one of the shows it touts is Bluey, and I believe Bluey is at the minute one of the like biggest shows at that demographic at the minute. It's gone down an absolute storm. So, you know, I think CBeebies is in a comfortable, safe place. I think there's a reason why they're keeping that on traditional TV as opposed to moving it digital. It makes it more accessible, easy for parents to access, whole litany of things. CBBC, on the other hand, I mean, again, it's moving to digital. I know that's been touted as like a cost-saving measure, but again, you got to look at the TV landscape. One of the jobs I work at involves working with children who are around the demographic of, you know, CBBC age, if you like. And I've asked them before, you know, when you ask, like, what kind of stuff do you watch when you're at home? Do you watch TV? Do you watch movies? Stuff like that. And a lot of them nowadays, you know, will say Netflix or Disney+. There's a very small handful who say that they tune into CBBC. And I think that's a great shame because, you know, for many of us, I'm sure a lot of you watching, CBBC at some point in our lives was really crucial. But I think we have to remember when we were watching CBBC, there was a lot less choice. And if there was choice to like satellite channels or even streaming sites, that was a lot less accessible. You know, I grew up in the early 2000s, satellite channels, cable, all that was a thing, but a lot of people couldn't afford it, we couldn't access it. So in terms of kids content, specific kids content, CBBC was the only outlet. So whilst I still say it's important, and I'm glad they're still pumping out these shows that are critically like well received and all that, I do worry that the consumption of the content by the target audience is gradually dwindling. And it wouldn't surprise me, as well as cost saving, if the move to CBBC Online is an attempt to recapture that or whatever. But yeah, CBBC's future is going to be very interesting, if you ask me. But that's all for this video. I just wanted to discuss these new logos, what they mean for the channels. But let me know in the comments, do you like these new logos for the BBC children's channels, or do you not like them? Let me know why for either way in the comments down below. Subscribe to the channel if you're brand new as well. We'd love to have you aboard with us here on the AMTV network. I've been Martyn from AMTV, and I'll see you next time. Thank you to our patrons for helping to support the show, and a special thank you to Macra, Hooks Media, Ben Freeman, Ethan Carberry-Holt, The Broken Kitsumanoid, Globe of Reviews, Derek Chambers, Sean Knock, DSTV New Zealand, and Dord Khan, our AMTV staff members.